It's really exciting to kind of learn about your journey and kind of get to know you, because you have really changed the scope and vision on how we look at entrepreneurship and how we could actually envision a future and make it happen. And it's interesting to see you build a platform and scale to 12 million and not have like a crazy CSU team or a big office in New York, like the traditional route. You change it completely. We would love to get into the business part, but before that, Nathan, I would love to hear like your backstory, kind of understand more about your context and where you're coming from and how did you get into entrepreneurship and whatnot. Would you mind giving us a quick walkthrough?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my parents were both teachers, and I grew up with the mentality that I'd go to school, get a real job, work for 30 years, retire. That's what they did, and they're living their best life, traveling the world and all that. But it just wasn't for me. I always had jobs from a young age. I worked for Aaron Sales and Lease, which is kind of like a rent-a-center. I worked for Firestone and a bunch of other just random small high school gigs, and I learned a lot about customer service and scales and sales and all the stuff that goes in business. But I also learned that I just hated working for other people. And when I got to college, I started hustling and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what business to start. So the closest thing around me was textbooks because I was in college. So I started a textbook
Mm-hmm.
business to compete with my school bookstore. And before I knew it, I had lines out the door of people trying to sell me their books to the point where I got a cease and desist letter from my college telling me to knock it off and stop competing with them. So that was my first glimpse into being an entrepreneur. And I didn't want to get kicked out of school. I told you my parents were teachers. That would not have gone over well. But I
Mm-hmm.
pivoted. I had this Amazon account. I started experimenting with different products to sell. And I came across baby products and toys in a big market at a good time. This was 2008, 2009. Amazon was bursting onto the scenes. And I started building all these relationships with different manufacturers that we would sell their products on Amazon. Now, fast forward ahead, it was really tough to hire for this business. College kids were really unreliable. Adults didn't want to work for me. I was 20. And so I got into hiring VAs. A buddy of mine introduced me to my first virtual assistant, and I started building this VA army of really good virtual assistants in the Philippines. And as Amazon became harder and started changing their rules, I started to offer these virtual assistants to other sellers. And that became FreeUp, which started off as an e-commerce marketplace. This was a lot of fun. It was our first B2B business. We got to learn partnerships and SEO and marketing and all the stuff that goes into B2B. And it was a lot more fun than just selling baby products on Amazon. So we doubled down. We focused just on free up. Well, like you said, we ended up scaling into doing $12 million a year by year four and was acquired in November 2019, right before COVID, which is a whole nother story we can get into if you want. And from there,
Yeah.
after the exit, we turned our attention towards building a portfolio of businesses and my personal brand, like you said, around just making business simpler, focusing on the core, the hiring, the bookkeeping, the SEO, the stuff that isn't necessarily sexy, but really is important for any business that you start.
Yeah, I agree, Nathan. And it's so interesting to see your journey. Like, we have seen a lot of, I would say, entrepreneurs or, business coaches, so called, talk about the core things, which they highlight and they forget the real things, which is, oh, marketing and sales, product, offer creation. Like, great, most of them have nailed it. But what we don't really understand is operations, hiring, team management, making accounts clean and having all the boring stuff done, and nobody talks about this. I'm glad you're actually bringing this up. So walk us through, Nathan. I mean, starting from a unexpected Amazon account which is blowing up to converting it into like a completely different business, which has huge scale and of course which was acquired. That means it has created a lot of value for investors too. Would you mind getting into the trenches and helping us understand, because it's like you're a solopreneur, you maybe you learned a thing or two, but how did you actually get that, like how did you build that muscle? What was the journey like for you in terms of building that free up and actually selling it for a huge exit?
Yeah. So whenever you have a marketplace, you always have an issue of the chicken or the egg. What comes first, right? If
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb doesn't have any houses to rent and they have too many clients or too many clients or vice versa, you run into issues. So we had an advantage because we had all these VAs from our Amazon business that we already knew, we already trusted, and they came with good referrals too. So then we had to go out and get the clients. And our sales pitch at the time was very simple. We said, hey, we only let the best of the best on our platform. We'll protect you if anything goes wrong. If you have even the smallest issue, we'll offer support and make sure that it's right. And no other marketplace specializes in e-commerce. E-commerce was pretty new. So you could go to Upwork and Fiverr and go through VAs and freelancers, but you weren't going through e-commerce VAs and freelancers. And by year 3 and 4, we were much more in the marketing space and all that. But year 1 and 2 was very much e-commerce sellers. Then we built a minimum viable product for our software. A developer we had used for our Amazon business made the simplest software imaginable. Clients could log in on their side. Freelancers could log in on their side. We would manually on our end attach a freelancer to a client, and the freelancer could log time and the client could see the time on their side. And that was it. It didn't do anything else. All the billing was manual. Affiliates was manual. Even new clients, like putting in requests, they would email me or Slack me or whatever it was, Skype at the time. And over time, as we proved that we could get clients, then we started to add a better sign up, add payments into the portal, add a project board, and add all these other things. But we really started with a minimum viable product. And then we started to create what has now become our organic marketing blueprint. If you go to outsourceschool.com/organic marketing, and I know that you're an Outsource School member, so you have access to our marketing SOPs, we had to learn B2B marketing from the ground up. So we focused on partners. We said, hey, we provide e-commerce VAs. That's all we do. Let's go find e-commerce software companies, e-commerce coaches, e-commerce Facebook group owners, all these different people in the e-commerce space that had the same client but offered something different. And we promoted their stuff to our audience and had them promote our VAs and our freelancers to their audience. So that was one part. 2 is podcasts. You said before, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and podcasts, just like Amazon, where it was kind of on the up and up at the time, it was becoming more popular. So I started going on every business podcast, every e-commerce podcast that I could find. And that was a great way to network and get backlinks and get in front of thousands of people at once. My ideal customer. I looked for influencers, who are the e-commerce influencers in the space. How could I get in front of them, get them to promote free up? We created a referral program where you get $50 or 50 cents for every hour we build to someone forever. So those influencers would promote free up because they'd get reoccurring kickbacks on the back end. And we were paying out hundreds of $1,000s in referral money by the second and third year. My business partner focused on SEO and putting out really good content all around hiring. So that helped free up climb in the ranking. And you can find more of that in our organic marketing blueprint. But we really just learned B2B marketing from the ground up and started to consistently find partners, put out good content, find affiliates, get in front of our ideal audience in different ways. And that's how we scaled.